In the farthest reaches of known space, there was a place that few dared to visit. It was marked on every star map, not with a name, but with warnings. This region was simply called the Forbidden Zone. Some people called it the Silent Veil because ships and signals often disappeared inside it, leaving only silence. Stories about the zone had been passed down for decades. Some said it was haunted by the ghosts of lost ships. Others claimed strange energy storms inside it could warp time and space. Most people didn't care about the stories, but no one wanted to test them. For years, no one had entered the Forbidden Zone. It was as if the universe itself had drawn a line around it and warned travelers to stay away. Even the most daring explorers avoided it. Yet life in space was unpredictable, and sometimes the impossible happened when no one was prepared. One quiet day, on a remote observation station far outside the borders of human-controlled space, the monitors blinked unexpectedly. The sensors, which normally showed empty darkness or distant stars, began to pick up something unusual. A small moving object appeared on the readings. At first, the crew thought it was a glitch. Computers occasionally made mistakes, especially when tracking objects near the edge of the Forbidden Zone. But the readings continued. The object was real. The station crew studied it carefully. The object had the exact shape of a human vessel. Its size was small enough to suggest it carried a single crew, but its design looked old, decades out of date. No fleet in the galaxy had a ship that matched it. Even more shocking was its location. It wasn't just near the Forbidden Zone, it was inside it. Someone, or something, had entered a region that was officially considered off-limits. The crew couldn't believe it. "It must be a mistake," one of them said. "No human ship has entered the Forbidden Zone in over 50 years. But the sensors didn't lie. The object moved slowly but steadily, deeper into the zone. Its energy signature was weak, almost like it was tired or damaged, but it was real. The crew had never seen anything like it. They reported the sighting immediately, sending the data to the galactic network. The news spread quickly. Across the galaxy, scientists, historians, and space authorities debated what it could mean. Some argued that it was an old ship from a forgotten mission, somehow lost in time and space. Others thought it might be a new type of experimental vessel, capable of stealth or unusual travel. But no one could agree on the truth. Meanwhile, the observation station continued to track the ship. It was moving slowly, almost as if it knew where it was going. Occasionally, it stopped, hovering silently in the darkness. The crew noticed that when the ship paused, strange energy waves seemed to ripple around it. The readings were unlike anything the sensors had ever recorded. Then, just when the crew thought they understood what was happening, a new signal appeared. A faint, broken transmission came through the monitors. It was human in tone, but weak and garbled, almost like it was traveling across too many light years to stay clear. The message was simple, repeated over and over. "We are here. We made it through. But something is watching." The crew froze. A human voice? Inside the Forbidden Zone? How could that be possible? The ship's design matched no current, human fleet. And the voice sounded like it belonged to someone from a long time ago. The crew checked the logs. The transmission was live. It wasn't a recording looping through the networks. Speculation exploded. Could this be a ship that disappeared decades ago, somehow returning? Could someone have survived inside the Forbidden Zone all this time? Or was it something else entirely? Some of the scientists argued that the transmission was evidence of life beyond known reality, something caught between dimensions. Others insisted that the voice was a trick of the sensors, an anomaly created by the strange energies inside the zone. Despite the debates, one thing was clear: the ship was real, and its presence inside the Forbidden Zone was undeniable. For the first time in decades, the region that had been avoided and feared was the center of attention for the entire galaxy. The observation station was small, far from major fleets, but its crew now found themselves at the center of a mystery that could not be ignored. They watched as the ship moved slowly, navigating through the darkness. The longer it stayed inside the zone, the more questions arose. Why had it come here? Was it lost or seeking something? And most importantly, could anyone reach it safely? The station crew sent multiple alerts trying to contact nearby fleets and research teams. But no ship responded quickly enough. The Forbidden Zone was dangerous, and most captains were unwilling to risk their lives for a single unknown vessel. Some of them claimed that curiosity was not worth the danger. Others feared that something alive or something dangerous waited inside the zone. Hours turned into days. The ship remained visible on the sensors, moving silently and steadily. The observation crew named it the Solace, after the old human word meaning comfort and relief. It was an ironic choice because the ship brought more questions and fear than comfort. But for the crew watching it, giving it a name made it feel real, almost human. Each day, the crew of the station watched the ship's slow progress. The more they observed, the more anomalies they noticed. The ship's energy signature seemed to shift slightly, as if it was adapting to the zone around it. At times it would appear in one location on the monitors, only to vanish and reappear somewhere else moments later. The behavior was impossible by conventional understanding. It was as if the ship was not just moving through space, but through time itself. The crew discussed what they had witnessed in hushed tones. Some were terrified, believing that the ship had brought with it some unknown danger. Others were fascinated, eager to understand what had happened and what the ship might reveal about the universe. Even in the silence of the Forbidden Zone, life continued, and humanity's curiosity pushed forward. The Solace's presence changed everything for the observation station. Ordinary routines were abandoned. Every sensor was dedicated to tracking it. Every log was carefully analyzed, every faint signal was scrutinized, and all the while the ship moved on, deeper into the darkness. Outside the station, the galaxy buzzed with rumors. News of a human ship inside the Forbidden Zone reached distant planets, star bases, and research facilities. Some dismissed it as a hoax or a sensor error. Others believed it was a miracle, proof that humans could survive where no one else could. And in corners of the galaxy rarely visited, older beings who remembered the first human explorers spoke quietly of a legend, returning. The Solace, whether alive or ghost, real or impossible, had captured the attention of the galaxy. And for the observation crew, who had watched its arrival and first transmissions, the Forbidden Zone was no longer just a dangerous place on a map. It had become a mystery that demanded answers, a story they would remember for the rest of their lives. And yet, as the days passed, one question remained in everyone's mind. What had drawn the human vessel here? Why had it appeared in a place everyone feared? And what, if anything, waited for it in the endless darkness ahead? The Forbidden Zone had opened its doors to humanity once more, and the galaxy was watching, uncertain and unable to decide if the ship truly existed, or if it was something far beyond understanding. After the first detection of the Solace in the Forbidden Zone, the galaxy's attention shifted. What had been a quiet corner of space, observed only by a few distant stations, became a subject of whispers, debates, and endless questions. Scientists, explorers, and space authorities all wanted to know the truth. Was the human vessel really there? And if so, what was it doing in a place no one had survived before? The observation station closest to the Forbidden Zone was the first to report something extraordinary. The human vessel had begun sending faint signals, strange bursts of energy that were barely recognizable as communication. The crew of the station gathered around the monitors, leaning closer, straining to make sense of the barely audible voice that seemed to travel through time and space. It was fractured, distorted, but unmistakably human. "We hear something," said one crew member, her voice tense but excited. "It's faint, but it's definitely human," the transmission repeated itself over and over, though every cycle was slightly different. The words were simple, almost desperate. "We made it through, but something is watching." No one on the station could understand who "we" was. The ship's design indicated it could only carry a small crew, but the voice implied multiple people. Were they alive? Were they trapped? Or had the signals been recorded long ago, now echoing through space? Each possibility seemed stranger than the last. The galactic network, A communication system that connected almost every planet, station, and research facility lit up with alerts. Experts from all over the galaxy joined to analyze the signals. Some insisted it was a technical glitch, an interference caused by the Forbidden Zone's strange energies. Others, more daring, suggested the unthinkable. The ship was alive, moving through the Forbidden Zone even now and sending a live message for someone, anyone, to hear. One of the most experienced scientists on the analysis team, an older researcher, who had spent decades studying lost missions, said quietly, "If it's real, this is the first human vessel to survive in that region in over 50 years. That's impossible. And yet, the evidence is here." The observation station continued to track the vessel. Every time they thought they had lost it, it would appear in another location inside the zone. Its movements were slow but deliberate, almost as if it were aware of being watched. The crew began to notice strange patterns in the signals, tiny fluctuations that did not match any natural phenomenon. It almost seemed like the ship itself was trying to communicate more than the words in the transmission. While the scientists debated the technicalities, the crew of the station couldn't help but wonder about the people inside. Whoever they were human. They had faced the unknown, traveled into a forbidden region, and somehow survived long enough to send messages that reached another life in the galaxy. The human heart was at the center of this mystery, even more than the technology or the strange physics of the zone. Messages from other stations began to arrive. Some were skeptical, dismissing the reports as sensor errors. Others claimed to have seen the vessel flicker on their instruments for a brief moment. One station, located on a remote asteroid belt near the outer rim, even recorded a faint, repeating energy pulse that matched a heartbeat rhythm. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it suggested that something inside the ship was alive. The Chador, more data arrived, the more the story grew. Pilots traveling near the edge of the Forbidden Zone began reporting strange sights. They described faint lights moving silently through the darkness, lights that vanished before any ship could approach. Some claimed they saw shapes that looked like human figures on the ship's deck, but each time someone tried to get a closer look, the vessel would disappear or appear somewhere else entirely. The human vessel became a legend almost overnight. It was no longer just a ship on the monitors, it was a living mystery. People began calling it the Solace, a name that seemed fitting because despite the fear and uncertainty it brought, it also offered hope. Here was proof that humans could survive in places no one thought possible. Here was a reminder that courage and curiosity could defy even the most extreme dangers. However, with excitement came fear. The Forbidden Zone had claimed countless ships before, and many wondered if the Solace would meet the same fate. The signals were not stable, and the energy readings suggested that the ship was not only surviving, but also interacting with the strange phenomena of the zone. No one knew if it was safe. Some scientists warned that trying to approach the vessel could be fatal. Others argued that ignoring it could mean losing an opportunity to understand something truly extraordinary. The observation station decided to send probes, small unmanned devices, to follow the vessel and gather more data. The first probe reached the edge of the Forbidden Zone and sent back images. They were strange and eerie, a vast darkness filled with shifting lights and shapes that seemed alive. In the distance, the faint outline of the human vessel appeared, glowing faintly as if it were suspended in a strange current of energy. Then just as suddenly the probe's signal was lost. The station crew held their breath. "It's too dangerous," one said. "No probe can survive long in there." Yet the data they did gather only deepened the mystery. The vessel's hull bore marks that were clearly human, but also symbols that no one recognized. Some believed they were remnants from an old mission, while others argued they were not of human origin at all. Whatever the truth, it was clear that the Solace was unique. As the days passed, more transmissions came through. Each was a mixture of words and strange patterns of energy that could not be decoded at first. Some scientists thought the patterns were attempts at communication beyond human language, a way of expressing something that words could not capture. Others suggested the ship might have been altered by the environment of the Forbidden Zone, making its signals behave in unpredictable ways. Despite the fear and uncertainty, the observation crew could not look away. Every transmission, every flicker of light, every tiny shift in the vessel's energy made them more certain that the Solace was alive in some form. And with each passing day, the human story at the heart of this mystery became clearer. Whoever was inside the ship had faced unimaginable danger and had survived, leaving behind proof of their courage and determination. The galaxy, it seemed, was divided. Some wanted to send fleets to investigate, to capture or rescue the vessel. Others warned against it, fearing that the Forbidden Zone's secrets could destroy any who entered. Meanwhile, the crew of the station continued their silent vigil, watching a ship that might have been lost to history but had returned, challenging everything people thought they knew about the universe. In quiet moments when the monitors were still, the station crew often imagined the people aboard the Solace. Were they afraid? Did they know anyone was listening? Could they feel the eyes of the galaxy on them as they moved silently through the darkness? These thoughts kept the crew awake at night, filling them with a strange mixture of awe, fear, and hope. The Solace was no longer just a ship. It had become a story, a symbol of human resilience and curiosity. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest corners of the universe, life could endure. And though no one could reach it, though its transmissions were broken and fleeting, its presence was undeniable. It had crossed the barrier of the Forbidden Zone and sent a message. Humanity was still out there, exploring, surviving, and daring to confront the unknown. The first transmissions were just the beginning. They offered only glimpses of the truth, fragments of a story that was far from complete. But for the people who received them, for the crew of the observation station, they were enough to spark wonder, fear, and a burning desire to understand. The galaxy could not ignore it. No one could. The human vessel had arrived in a place that should have been silent and empty. And in doing so, it had reminded the galaxy of something important. The unknown was not just a danger, it was an invitation. And the people aboard the Solace, whoever they were, had answered that invitation. Every day the station watched. Every day, signals came and went, each one carrying a hint of life, a whisper of hope, a question that demanded an answer. The Solace was alive, and so was the story it carried. And as long as it remained in the Forbidden Zone, the galaxy would keep watching, listening, and wondering. The human vessel had entered a forbidden place, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that some mysteries could not be dismissed. They existed, and they waited for those brave enough to seek the truth. The curiosity surrounding the Solace had grown into a galaxy-wide obsession. After weeks of observing the human vessel from afar, scientists and space authorities agreed on one thing. Something unprecedented was happening inside the Forbidden Zone, and they needed answers. Waiting any longer was not an option. But the Forbidden Zone was dangerous, and sending human crews could be suicidal. The solution was clear. Send unmanned probes. Small, durable, and equipped with cameras, scanners, and quantum relays. These probes could enter the Forbidden Zone and gather information without risking lives. It was the first time such an operation had been attempted at this scale. Every station, every research team, and every fleet commander watched as the first probe was launched toward the strange, dark expanse. For hours, nothing happened. The probe drifted slowly, entering the zone with all its systems on high alert. Back at the observation station, the crew monitored its every move. The sensors picked up anomalies immediately. Energy readings surged and dipped unpredictably. Space seemed to ripple around the probe, and faint, unexplainable lights appeared in the darkness. It was as if the very fabric of space was bending around the ship and the probe. Then a signal returned. Images flickered on the monitors, blurry at first, then clearer. The probe had found the Solace. It was a haunting sight. The ship drifted slowly, its hull scarred and weathered, yet somehow intact. The human markings were visible, faded by decades, but unmistakable. Lights inside the ship flickered, as if the crew still moved about, though no one could be sure. The vessel seemed almost alive, responding subtly to the presence of the probe. Its movements were gentle, deliberate, and mysterious. The crew at the station leaned closer to the monitors, mesmerized. "It's real," one whispered. "It's actually real." Other probes were launched in quick succession. Each one returned, with new images, new data, and new mysteries. The Solace's energy signature was unlike anything recorded before. It did not behave like a normal ship, nor did it match any known human or alien technology. Its energy pulsed irregularly, sometimes vanishing and reappearing in a different pattern. It was as if the vessel was alive in a way that went beyond mechanical systems. The images showed subtle, eerie details. Small flickers of light along the hull suggested movement inside the ship. Shadows appeared and vanished in patterns that hinted at something human, or something pretending to be human. Sensors recorded faint life signs, though not enough to confirm actual living beings. Every reading added to the mystery, leaving experts debating late into the night. Scientists tried to interpret the energy anomalies. Some suggested that the Solace had somehow adapted to the Forbidden Zone, using its strange energy to survive. Others believed the ship had crossed into a region where the normal laws of physics no longer applied, creating readings that defied explanation. No one had a complete answer. Meanwhile, rumors began to spread among the galaxy's observers. Pilots reported seeing strange lights flickering at the edges of their vision while flying near the zone. Some claimed they could hear faint, distorted voices, almost like echoes carried on the energy waves of space. Others were skeptical, dismissing the reports as fatigue or overactive imaginations. But as more data arrived, it became harder to deny the possibility. The Solace was there, alive in some form, moving through a place no human ship should have survived. The observation station's crew continued to analyze every transmission and every image. They noticed that the ship seemed to move with purpose, as if it had a destination in mind. Its path was slow and deliberate, winding through the darkness, avoiding areas of high-energy turbulence. Some scientists speculated that the crew, or whatever remained of them, had learned to navigate the Forbidden Zone in ways that human pilots could not understand. One of the most puzzling discoveries came from the probe cameras. In certain images, the hull of the Solace appeared transparent, revealing vague shapes inside. At first, the station crew thought it was a technical glitch, but repeated images showed the same patterns. Shadows moved inside the ship in ways that suggested human or humanoid figures. Yet no probe could enter close enough to confirm what was there. The energy readings added another layer of complexity. The ship's signature sometimes aligned with natural phenomena in the zone, almost as if it was interacting with the environment instead of just drifting through it. At times, the energy patterns resembled a heartbeat, faint but unmistakable. It was not strong enough to confirm life, but it suggested something inside the vessel was alive or at least conscious. Debates raged among scientists. Some argued that the vessel was no longer fully human, altered by decades in the Forbidden Zone. Others believed the ship itself had become a living organism, a combination of technology and energy that defied conventional understanding. Philosophers joined the discussion too, wondering if humanity could survive in places beyond comprehension, and if the Solace represented a new chapter in human evolution. While the experts debated, the observation station's crew continued their vigil. Each day brought new surprises. The ship would sometimes flicker on sensors, disappear, and reappear elsewhere. The probe cameras caught glimpses of strange lights dancing along the edges of the hull, colors that did not match any known spectrum. Occasionally, faint, distorted sounds accompanied the images, though no one could be sure if they were real or artifacts of the equipment. Despite the danger, there was excitement too. Watching the ship, seeing its slow, deliberate movements, gave the crew a sense of wonder they had never felt before. They imagined the people who had once traveled on the Solace, what they must have felt, and how they had endured. Each fragment of data carried a human story, a hint of courage, survival, and determination. The probes continued to report unusual phenomena. At times, the ship seemed to split into two images simultaneously, visible in different locations at once. Scientists debated whether it was an optical illusion, A reflection in the energy currents, or something far stranger? A vessel existing in more than one place at the same time. No theory fully explained the behavior, leaving everyone involved in awe. Every image, every reading made the story of the Solace more compelling. It was not just a ship. It was a mystery, a living question that the galaxy could not answer. Pilots, researchers, and civilians alike followed the news obsessively. Conversations across planets and stations revolved around the ship and its strange behaviors. Some feared it, some revered it, and some simply wondered what had happened to the people who had once called it home. The observation station continued to monitor the situation with careful diligence. They coordinated with other stations and fleets to ensure that no human risked their life unnecessarily. The Forbidden Zone was still dangerous, still full of unknown forces, but the Solace had proven that survival, in some form, was possible. That proof fascinated everyone. As more probes were launched, one thing became clear. The Solace was not going to reveal its secrets easily. It moved slowly, carefully, sometimes interacting with the energy currents of the Forbidden Zone. Its faint signals and mysterious images hinted at life, but life that had adapted to the unimaginable. Every day, scientists and observers tried to decode the patterns, but the ship remained elusive, a puzzle that could not be solved. Yet for the observation crew, every image, every energy reading, and every faint transmission was enough to keep hope alive. They were witnesses to a story of survival, curiosity, and human courage that stretched beyond the known boundaries of space. Even as the probes faced danger, and some were lost, the mission continued. The galaxy's fascination with the Solace only grew, and the human story at the heart of it inspired more wonder than fear. The human vessel in the Forbidden Zone had become more than a mystery. It had become a symbol. It reminded everyone that humanity, even in the face of unimaginable danger, could survive, adapt, and leave behind a story that would inspire generations. And while the probes could capture only fragments of the truth, those fragments were enough to make the galaxy believe in something extraordinary. For the observation station and the scientists who followed the Solace, the story was just beginning. The vessel had survived decades in the most dangerous place known, sending faint signals and glimpses that challenged everything humanity thought it knew. And as long as the Solace continued to move through the darkness, the human story at its core would continue to captivate, inspire, and raise questions that might never be fully answered. The probes, the images, the signals, they were all pieces of a puzzle that no one could yet complete. And yet, they were enough to prove one undeniable truth. The human vessel existed, alive in some way, and it had defied the impossible. The mystery of the Solace had captured the attention of the galaxy, but despite weeks of monitoring and analyzing the vessel, the truth remained just out of reach. The probes had sent back images and energy readings, revealing strange lights, flickering shadows, and patterns that seemed almost alive, but no one could tell who was on the ship, how they survived, or what their ultimate goal was. It was in this tense moment that a forgotten archive on a remote, abandoned research station became the focus of renewed interest. The station, located on the edge of human-controlled space, had been inactive for decades. Dust had settled on its equipment, and only a handful of researchers remembered it existed. Yet when the signals from the Solace reached their frequencies, a strange resonance appeared. Something about the ship's transmissions aligned with the station's old database. A small team of scientists and historians was sent to investigate. They carefully scanned through centuries-old logs, manuals, and storage drives, searching for anything related to the missing ship. After hours of painstaking work, they found it, a captain's log belonging to the Solace. The log was old, its pages yellowed and brittle or in digital form, its files nearly corrupted from years of neglect. But the entries were intact. They revealed details about the ship's original mission, a mission that had been classified at the time and had faded from public memory. The Solace had been part of an experimental program, testing faster-than-light travel beyond the limits of known physics. The mission was considered too dangerous even for experienced crews, and after its disappearance, it had become one of the greatest mysteries of the galaxy. The first entries in the log were routine, almost mundane, describing life aboard the ship. The captain spoke of the crew's excitement, their careful preparations, and the anticipation of exploring uncharted space. But as the log progressed, the tone shifted. The entries became tense, describing strange anomalies and phenomena that defied explanation. "We are seeing things that should not exist," one entry read. "Stars appear and disappear. Space twists and folds around us. The instruments cannot measure it all, but we press on. We must complete our mission." It was clear that the crew of the Solace had encountered forces beyond human understanding. The log described corridors of light stretching across empty space, areas where time seemed to slow, and energy patterns that seemed almost alive. The crew had faced dangers that no one could have imagined, yet they persisted, recording every observation. As the researchers continued reading, they came across the final entry. It was brief, almost haunting. "We crossed something today, something that is not space as we know it. It surrounds us and we are a part of it now. We do not know if we will ever return. If anyone finds this, know that we survived, somehow. But we are not where you think we are." The log offered no explanation of what had happened, only hints of the unimaginable experiences the crew had endured. It confirmed that the ship's journey into the Forbidden Zone had been intentional, a deliberate test of limits that humanity was only beginning to understand. The discovery of the captain's log electrified the scientific community. Suddenly there was proof, not just of the ship's existence, but of the human experience at its center. The crew of the Solace had been real people, living, breathing, thinking, and enduring the impossible. Every flicker of light on the probe images, every strange signal, every energy anomaly, now carried a human story behind it. Back at the observation station, the monitors tracked the Solace as it moved through the Forbidden Zone. The data from the captain's log provided new context. Scientists could match descriptions in the log with the strange energy readings captured by the probes. Certain fluctuations aligned with areas where the captain had noted space twisting or energy ripples that affected navigation. It was as if the ship itself was following the path described in the log even decades later. The human side of the story became even more compelling. Researchers began to imagine the crew's struggles, their fears, and their courage. How had they survived in a region that was considered deadly? How had they maintained hope when no one knew if rescue was possible? Every observation reminded the scientists that the story of the Solace was not just a technical mystery, but a human one. Courage, determination, and resilience had driven the crew forward, even when the universe seemed against them. In some images, from the probes, shadows could be seen moving across the ship's deck. With the knowledge from the log, the observation crew speculated that these were not ghosts or illusions, but perhaps remnants of the crew's actions, somehow preserved in the strange energy fields of the Forbidden Zone. The Solace might have been caught in a place where time did not flow normally, where past and present coexisted in ways humans could barely understand. The log also revealed moments of ordinary humanity amidst the extraordinary circumstances. The captain wrote about meals shared in silence, small arguments over navigation, the laughter of crew members when things briefly went right. Even in the face of unimaginable danger, human life persisted, with all its small, familiar rhythms. These details made the story even more compelling. The Solace was no longer just a vessel, it was a home, a community of people who had faced the unknown together. As the observation crew analyzed the latest images, a sense of awe filled the room. The ship drifted silently through the darkness, yet the human story was evident in every flicker of light, every energy pulse, every shadow. The log had given meaning to the anomalies, transforming abstract data into a story of survival, courage, and endurance. Across the galaxy, reactions were profound. Scholars wrote papers trying to interpret the log. Pilots spoke in hushed tones about the bravery of the crew. Families who had long forgotten about lost missions found renewed hope that humanity's explorers were capable of remarkable endurance. The Solace had become more than a mystery. It had become an inspiration. Yet the log also raised troubling questions. If the crew had survived, why were the signals so faint, fragmented, and difficult to decode? If they were alive, how were they? Existing in a region that seemed to bend the rules of physics. And most unsettling of all, if the Solace was caught in some unknown dimension of the Forbidden Zone, could anyone ever reach them safely? Scientists began to hypothesize. Some believed the crew had adapted to the environment, existing in a state that blended life, energy, and the strange forces of the zone. Others suggested that the ship itself had become a vessel of memory and consciousness, a repository of the crew's existence rather than a traditional living crew. Philosophers wondered whether the Solace had crossed into a space where human perception could no longer fully grasp reality. The human aspect, however, remained undeniable. Every image, every signal, every reading spoke of people who had faced incredible odds, who had ventured where no one else dared, and who had survived long enough to send messages back to the galaxy. The story was about courage, perseverance, and the unbreakable human spirit, even in places where survival seemed impossible. The observation crew decided to adjust their monitoring techniques based on insights from the log. They tracked energy, fluctuations that aligned with the captain's descriptions, attempting to predict where the ship might appear next. They studied patterns in the signals, searching for hidden messages or repeated cycles that could reveal more about the crew's condition. The Solace was no longer just an object to observe. It was a story to follow, a human journey unfolding across the edges of known space. Even with all this progress, the mystery was far from solved. The log offered hints but not answers. The crew of the Solace remained largely unseen, and the full extent of their survival was unknown. Yet the discovery had changed everything. The human presence, the human story, was now at the center of the investigation. Every anomaly in the Forbidden Zone was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It was a clue to understanding the people aboard the vessel and the extraordinary journey they had endured. As the galaxy watched, the Solace continued to drift through the Forbidden Zone. Signals flickered, shadows moved, and lights danced along the hull. The story of the captain's log gave life to the mystery, transforming it from abstract data into a narrative of human courage. The vessel was more than a ship. It was a testament to resilience, curiosity, and the indomitable human spirit. And for the observation crew, for the scientists, and for everyone following the story, the log offered a sense of connection. It reminded them that even in the darkest and most dangerous corners of the universe, humanity could endure. The crew of the Solace had faced unimaginable challenges, yet their story persisted, transmitted across decades and light years, waiting for someone to understand. The captain's log had done more than reveal history. It had humanized the mystery. It showed that the journey of the Solace was not just about space, energy, or science. It was about people. And as the observation crew continued their vigil, they felt the weight of that human story, inspiring them to keep searching, keep observing, and keep hoping for answers. The vessel in the Forbidden Zone was no longer an enigma without context. Through the captain's log, the galaxy glimpsed the courage, endurance, and humanity of those aboard. And while the full truth remained just out of reach, the story of the Solace had become something eternal, a tale of survey. The discovery of the captain's log had transformed the mystery of the Solace into a human story. For decades, the vessel had been lost, presumed destroyed, or vanished forever. Now, with the faint signals, strange energy readings, and the captain's words in hand, the galaxy faced a profound question. What should be done about the ship? The Galactic Council, the body responsible for regulating space travel and maintaining safety across human colonies, convened an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of systems gathered to discuss the implications of the Solace's presence. The Forbidden Zone had always been off-limits. No ship had ever returned from it without being completely destroyed or lost to time. Yet, now a human vessel, the crew somehow surviving or preserved, existed within that dangerous region. Arguments were fierce. Some council members insisted that every effort must be made to reach the ship. "We cannot ignore this," one speaker said. "This is not just a vessel, these are our people. We have a duty to bring them home or at least understand what they've experienced. We cannot leave them in that darkness. Others were less convinced. We do not know what we face, another council member countered. The Forbidden Zone is not a place for rescue missions. Ships have disappeared here for centuries. We risk more lives by trying to enter, and for what? A vessel that may not even exist in the reality we understand? The debate split the galaxy. Entire sectors discussed the morality, the danger, and the possibilities. Independent scientists, pilots, and ordinary citizens voiced their opinions. News networks broadcast updates about the Solace constantly, showing the flickering images from probes, the strange energy readings, and now, the pages of the captain's log. People everywhere were captivated. The public fascination was not just about technology or the danger of the Forbidden Zone. It was about humans. The crew of the Solace had survived in unimaginable conditions. Even the faintest proof of their endurance inspired hope, courage, and curiosity. People across star systems speculated about what life aboard the ship might be like. Were they still alive? Were they aware that the galaxy was searching for them? Could they communicate more clearly if someone found a way to reach them? Meanwhile, scientists began intense discussions about the nature of the Forbidden Zone itself. The energy readings suggested that space inside it did not behave normally. Time seemed to fluctuate. Energy patterns were alive in a way that no one had ever studied before. The Solace appeared to navigate these anomalies with an intelligence that the galaxy could not explain. Some hypothesized that the ship itself had adapted to its environment. Others suggested that the crew had learned to exist in a state beyond conventional human understanding. Despite the debates, preparations for an investigation began. Probes with advanced shields and sensors were readied to enter the Forbidden Zone more deeply than before. These probes would attempt to map the vessel's movements, collect detailed images, and analyze the energy currents surrounding it. Every station, every research facility, and every fleet command contributed resources. The galaxy's curiosity and concern for human life had created a united effort, unprecedented in history. The first deep-range probes entered the zone carefully. They followed the path described in the captain's log, hoping to correlate the energy patterns with the ship's current location. For hours, the probes drifted silently through darkness, their instruments scanning for anomalies. Then, just as predicted, the Solace appeared on the monitors. The ship was moving slowly, almost as if it were aware of the probes' energy patterns. Along its hull shifted in response to the measurements, creating faint pulses that resembled a heartbeat. The human crew, or the memory of their presence, was intertwined with the energy, and the probes recorded everything with meticulous precision. The DAO's data returned by the probes confirmed one thing. The Solace was not just a derelict vessel. It was alive in some sense. Every flicker of light, every shift in energy, and every signal suggested intelligence, intent, and endurance. Scientists were astonished. The idea that a human ship could survive decades inside the Forbidden Zone was extraordinary. That it could still emit signs of life was beyond comprehension. While the scientists marveled at the data, political debates raged. Some factions insisted that fleets must attempt to enter the zone to retrieve the ship. Others warned that the dangers were too great, arguing that no human crew should risk their lives for a vessel that might already be beyond help. The ethical questions were complex. Was it right to try a rescue? Was it right to leave the crew isolated in a strange dimension, even if it meant saving others? Amid the debates, independent observers speculated about the crew's intentions. Some believed the crew had chosen to remain inside the Forbidden Zone, not as captives of circumstance but as explorers of a new reality. Others argued that the IA vessel might be attempting to communicate, waiting for someone to understand its signals fully. Every faint transmission was scrutinized for hidden meaning. Every anomaly was analyzed as a possible message. Even as the galaxy argued, the Solace continued its journey. Its slow movement suggested it was searching, exploring, or simply surviving. Sometimes the vessel would appear in one location on the monitors, then vanish, only to reappear elsewhere. This pattern confounded scientists and strategists alike. Could it exist in two places at once? Was it moving through a different dimension, beyond the understanding of conventional navigation? The human aspect of the story remained central. Scientists and observers could not forget that the solace represented people, real human beings who had ventured into the unknown. The fear, determination, and courage of the crew resonated deeply. It reminded everyone that exploration, survival, and the pursuit of knowledge were human traits, enduring even in the most dangerous circumstances. Across the galaxy, stories and speculations grew. Pilots reported seeing faint silhouettes of the ship flicker at the edges of nebulae, and some claimed they heard ghostly echoes of human voices carried by energy waves. Though these accounts could not always be verified, they fueled public fascination. The Solace had become a legend, a story that combined mystery, science, and human resilience. As the days passed, council debates continued. Some proposed sending specially designed rescue ships, equipped with shielding and advanced navigation, capable of surviving the energy currents of the Forbidden Zone. Others argued for caution, recommending only unmanned probes and continued observation. Both sides agreed on one point: the Solace was a priority, but it was impossible to predict what might happen if humans attempted to reach it. The probes themselves encountered more anomalies. Energy currents sometimes distorted their instruments, creating temporary malfunctions. Images of the ship flickered and doubled, sometimes appearing larger or smaller than it should. Sensor readings occasionally suggested movement inside the ship that could not be attributed to physics alone. It was as if the crew, or the memory of their presence, interacted with the probes, aware of the observation even without direct communication. Scientists began to develop new hypotheses. Perhaps the Solace existed partly in our reality and partly in another, a state between dimensions that allowed it to survive the extreme conditions of the Forbidden Zone. Perhaps the ship had learned to navigate these currents naturally, using knowledge gained from decades of existence in isolation. Whatever the explanation, the human story at the heart of it remained unchanged. People had survived against impossible odds. The observation crews felt a growing connection to the vessel. Every new probe, every new image, every faint transmission was a reminder of the courage required to endure. And with every update, the galaxy felt a collective sense of hope. The Solace represented the best qualities of humanity: resilience, curiosity, and the drive to confront the unknown. Yet the danger remained. Each probe lost in the Forbidden Zone reminded everyone that the region was not forgiving. Time and energy behaved unpredictably, and the ship itself moved in ways that could not be anticipated. The Council, the scientists, and the observers understood that their knowledge was limited and that any attempt to reach the vessel directly carried extreme risk. Despite these dangers, the mystery of the Solace drove innovation. Scientists developed new probe designs, improved energy shields, and advanced communication systems capable of detecting the faintest signals. The galaxy's collective imagination soared, inspired by the human story hidden inside the Forbidden Zone. For ordinary people, the vessel became a symbol of hope. It reminded them that even in the darkest, most dangerous corners of existence, humans could endure. For scientists, it became a challenge, a puzzle that demanded ingenuity and perseverance. And for those watching the monitors, the story of the Solace was deeply personal. A reminder that human courage and determination could shine even in the face of incomprehensible danger. The debates, the observations, the probes, and the analyses all centered on one question: could humanity truly understand the Solace and its journey? And more importantly, could someone eventually reach the crew, or whatever remained of them, and bring their story home? For now, the answer remained uncertain. The vessel continued to drift through the Forbidden Zone, sending faint signals, flickering, in images, and leaving the galaxy both in awe and in fear. The human story was alive, persistent. Time passed slowly for the observation crews tracking the Solace. Weeks had turned into months, and the galaxy had become obsessed with the vessel drifting inside the forbidden zone. Every flicker on the monitors, every anomaly in the energy readings, every faint transmission was studied endlessly. Yet despite all the efforts, the ship remained as enigmatic as ever. The latest probes had returned more data than any previous mission. The Solace moved with deliberate slowness, weaving through the dangerous currents of the zone. Energy readings suggested that it had adapted perfectly to the hostile environment. At times, the ship seemed almost alive, responding subtly to the probe's presence, its movements intentional, even intelligent. One day, a team of scientists at the observation station noticed something extraordinary. Among the usual energy pulses, one reading stood out. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it followed a clear pattern, a rhythmic, steady beat. It was unlike any machine signal they had ever recorded. The pulse matched the tempo of a human heartbeat. The news spread quickly among the stations, monitoring the forbidden zone. Could it be possible that life in some form persisted aboard the Solace? The thought electrified the crew and scientists alike. For decades, the ship had been presumed lost. Now the faint heartbeat suggested that the human story continued, somehow surviving in a place where no one should have endured. Attempts were made to enhance the signal. Sensors were calibrated to detect the faint energy fluctuations more clearly. Every flicker, every heartbeat, was analyzed in painstaking detail. The readings confirmed what they had suspected. The pulse was real. There was life, or at least a trace of human energy, emanating from the vessel. The station crew watched in awe as the Solace moved slowly through the darkness. Its hull, weathered and scarred, glowed faintly with the energy currents of the E-zone. Shadows appeared to shift along its deck. Could these be remnants of the crew, memories etched into the energy of the ship? Or were they something else beyond human comprehension? No one knew for certain. As the heartbeat signal persisted, debates across the galaxy intensified. Some argued that immediate action was necessary. Specialized rescue ships designed to withstand the extreme energy currents could attempt to reach the Solace. Others cautioned against it, warning that the vessel might exist in a state that defied conventional physics. Any attempt to intervene could result in disaster, losing both the rescuers and the ship itself. Scientists focused on understanding the signal. Some theorized that the pulse was not from living beings in the traditional sense, but a residual energy imprint of the crew's consciousness. Decades of exposure to the forbidden zone, combined with the vessel's unique technology, may have transformed the crew into a form of energy that persisted alongside the ship. It was a concept that challenged every known principle of biology and physics. Despite the uncertainty, the human story remained central. The heartbeat reminded everyone that this was not just a technological anomaly. It was the legacy of people who had ventured into the unknown, faced unimaginable danger, and left traces of their presence behind. For the observation crews, for scientists, and for the people following the story, it was a profound connection to courage, endurance, and survival. The Solace continued to drift deeper into the forbidden zone. Its movements became more deliberate, almost as if it was guiding itself to a specific location. The energy readings shifted subtly, showing areas where the ship interacted with the environment in ways that could not be explained. At times, the pulse of the heartbeat seemed to synchronize with the energy currents, creating a rhythm that was both eerie and beautiful. The faint signals were accompanied by occasional transmissions, garbled and fragmented but unmistakably human. Words like home, survive, and watching flickered through the monitors. Each transmission offered glimpses of the crew's experience, though no complete message was ever received. The vessel remained elusive, its true condition a mystery, but the fragments of communication reminded the galaxy that humans had endured something extraordinary. Meanwhile, the debate over intervention continued. Some fleets were ready to attempt a rescue, equipped with the latest technology and reinforced shielding. Others argued that patience was necessary. The forbidden zone was unpredictable, and a direct approach could destabilize the delicate energy currents surrounding the Solace, potentially destroying the vessel or dispersing the faint pulse that indicated life. Observation crews continued, their vigil tracking the ship as it moved through the dark expanse. Over time, a pattern emerged. The Solace seemed to follow a subtle course through the zone, moving past energy clusters and avoiding areas of extreme turbulence. Scientists speculated that the ship had learned to navigate the environment, using its energy signature to interact with the currents in a way that allowed survival. The human story was intertwined with this navigation, every pulse, flicker, and signal reflecting resilience and adaptation. As the heartbeat signal persisted, some researchers began to interpret it in an emotional context. It was a reminder of humanity's persistence, even when facing forces far beyond comprehension. Each beat was a story, a testament to courage, endurance, and hope. For those watching from stations far away, the pulse was almost comforting, a sign that despite decades lost in impossible conditions, human life had found a way to persist. Then came the moment that stunned everyone. A probe, sent to record high-resolution images, captured a brief glimpse of the ship's interior. Shadows moved along corridors, shifting as if alive. Instruments recorded faint fluctuations in gravity and energy fields, suggesting the presence of someone moving inside. The heartbeat pulse remained steady, synchronized with the shadow's movement. It was the closest anyone had come to witnessing life aboard the Solace in decades. Scientists and observers were left with more questions than answers. Could the crew be surviving in a form beyond traditional biology? Had decades in the forbidden zone altered them, transforming them into beings of energy and consciousness intertwined with the vessel? Or were these merely echoes of the past, memories imprinted on the ship's hull and the zone itself? No one could say for certain. The galaxy watched in collective awe. The Solace had become more than a vessel. It was a symbol of exploration, survival, and human courage. Entire systems debated the ethics of intervention. Some argued that leaving the ship untouched preserved the mystery, the faint heartbeat, and the traces of human resilience. Others insisted that humanity could not turn away, that every effort must be made to reach the vessel and bring the crew home, regardless of the risk. The observation crews maintained their vigil, understanding that the Solace had become both a mystery and a living monument. Every flicker of light, every faint signal, every heartbeat pulse reminded them of the people aboard, of the courage it took to enter a forbidden region, and of the human story that endured despite all odds. Over time, the ship began to fade from the sensors. Its energy signature weakened, disappearing in some readings only to reappear moments later. It was as if the Solace was slipping between realities, moving through dimensions that could not be fully observed. Yet the heartbeat pulse remained faint but steady, echoing across the monitors like a whisper from the past. No rescue mission was attempted. The dangers were too great, the mysteries too profound. Instead, the galaxy chose to observe, record, and remember. The Solace had become a story told across planets, stations, and generations. A story of human courage, survival, and the enduring power of hope. The final transmissions, garbled and brief, continued to arrive sporadically. They were fragments impossible to reconstruct fully, yet each one carried the essence of humanity: determination, fear, wonder, and the desire to endure. Scientists cataloged every pulse, every shadow, every flicker of light, knowing that these fragments were all that could be preserved of the Solace's story. And then, one day, the ship disappeared entirely from the sensors. No image, no energy reading, no heartbeat. The Forbidden Zone had claimed it once more, or perhaps it had slipped entirely into a dimension beyond observation. The galaxy was left with silence, but not with emptiness. The story remained, embedded in the captain's log. The heartbeat, pulses, the energy readings, and the memories of all who had witnessed the vessel. The Solace became legend. Scholars studied its journey. Pilots told stories of the mysterious ship they had glimpsed at the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Families spoke of human courage and survival against impossible odds. Across the galaxy, the tale of the Solace inspired hope, curiosity, and a belief in the resilience of humanity. Even though the ship was gone, the heartbeat remained in the collective imagination. It reminded everyone that humanity could endure even in the most dangerous, mysterious, and hostile regions of the universe. The Solace had ventured where no one else dared, survived where survival seemed impossible, and left a story that would echo across generations. And so the galaxy learned a lesson that could never be forgotten. Even in the darkest corners of existence, humanity's courage, resilience, and curiosity endure. The Solace, whether alive, transformed, or preserved in memory and energy, had become more than a vessel. It had become a symbol of what it meant to be human, a story of hope, survival, and the endless pursuit of the unknown.